All right, in this video, we are going to be talking about absolute positioning. It is a very cool topic, and I love Figma's functionality here. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff once you understand it. So we're going to work through a few examples from simple to more complex. I encourage you to open Figma and try to build along with me as I go through these examples. So let's jump in. First thing I want to mention, we will be using some terminology that deals with auto layout. So if you haven't watched that video already, or you're unfamiliar with auto layout terminology, I suggest you watch that video first. But otherwise, let's continue. So what is absolute positioning? Unlike auto layout, which is concerned with the flow and spacing of objects within a frame, absolute positioning deals with pinning objects to specific locations on a frame, like the corners or the sides, like this. So in this example, we have a hug frame, which means as I add letters in here, the frame grows or shrinks in size. But this number in the circle stays pinned to the top right. So we're going to learn how we do that. So let's try to build it ourselves here. I have a frame and some text and a circle. Let's see if we can reconstruct this behavior. So I'm going to bring the inbox text inside this frame, make this frame into a hug frame. Well, it already is. So the width is hug. This should already be working. Let's just do a test here. Yeah, seems to be working. Now, what do we do with this circle? I need to bring it into the frame so it becomes part of the frame. But instead of being part of the contents and auto-flowing like this, I want to push this button up here. And that I've drawn it big here for you, but it's this little icon. That means if you hover over it, it will say ignore auto layout. So basically it's a member of the frame, but it is not being controlled by auto layout. It's independent. In fact, I can move it anywhere in the frame. It doesn't affect anything. But what I want to do is pin it to the top right corner. All of those controls are in this area, in the position area of the properties panel. I find the easiest way to interpret all of this is just to go to these two drop-down menus here. What part of this inbox frame do we want this circle to be pinned to? Well, it's pretty easy in this case. I want it pinned to the right, and I want it pinned to the top. Now, there's a little graphic here which tries to visually show you what you've selected, and you can actually make changes here if you wanted to. But right top is where I want it. Now, the trick here, which I found a little confusing at first, is when I change this, say, from left or to right, I expect this to move, but it doesn't move at all. All we've done here is say which corner is it actually going to be pinned to. So we've established that it's pinned to the right and the top, but this is not the location I want it to be. So the way I work is to then go up to X and Y here and just drag X and Y here. I find this the easiest way to control it. I actually want it to be here, and then Y I want a little bit lower, and I just eyeball it, okay? So it's pinned to the right and the top, and that's where I want it to be. Let's just do a quick check by changing the text here a little bit. Yep, it's growing and the number is moving correctly. That's really all there is to it. Let's look at another example. This is a similar example, but we are clipping some content inside the frame just for an aesthetic effect. So imagine it's a name tag or something like that. And of course it grows with a width that is set to hug. And I've got the circles just a little bit in front of the text, just to look interesting. Now, let's try building this. So first things first, let's put the text into the frame, and it's a hug frame, so it's snapped to the size of the text. Great. Okay, I've got to get the circles in here now. Now I'm having trouble dragging this circle into the frame. This is not really related to absolute positioning, but you might run into this sometimes. If I hold down the Command key or the Control key on the PC, it's sort of a deep selection modifying key. So I can actually drag it into the frame this way. Let's see if I can drag this one in normally. This one goes in regularly. Okay, so I've got both my circles and the text in here. Now, which part of the frame is this connected to? Well, it's the bottom right. That's pretty easy. But before we can even do that, I have to click on this button to say, don't be part of the auto layout part of this frame. Click on it. Now I decide which corner it's attached to, the right and the bottom, but it's still not in the right spot. So I use X and Y here to just position it where I want it, right about there. And I think you can see one of the problems. I need this clipped. So this frame I just have to turn on clip content here. There we go. Beautiful. Now let's do it for this one. Same thing. I don't want it part of auto layout, so I click on it. Where is it pinned? Left top. Oh, that's actually correct right away. I just need to adjust the X and adjust the Y. You get the general idea. But that's how that would work. That's pretty cool. Let's do another one. Now, I thought this was so cool the first time I built one of these. So here we have a frame with content that stretches to fill it. So whether this frame grows vertically or horizontally, the lines, they're aware of the length that they need to be and the position they need to be sort of in the middle of the width or the height. All right, let's see if we can build this. I've got a frame here. It doesn't have auto layout. Okay, so I don't need to ignore auto layout. It doesn't have it. I'll bring in the arrow. And in this case, I want it attached to its parent frame, not just on the left. Well, let's see. If I just have it on the left, it's just going to move, yeah, like that. I don't want that. I want the arrow to attach to the left and right. So this is a new feature. We've got the right is attached to the right, the left is attached to the left. Awesome. Now, if I move the bottom of this frame, the arrow is still not moving with it. That is the last piece of the puzzle for this arrow, is that I want it vertically attached to the center of its parent. So now when this frame moves, not only does it know left and right what to do, it also knows up and down what to do, attached to the center, the left and the right. Awesome. Now, if I want to make another one, I think I'm just going to duplicate this one in place, rotate it 90 degrees, and let's see, I'll just drag the size down so that it's in about the right spot. Okay, and I'll do the same thing, but just sort of in reverse, well, rotated. So for this guy, we want it attached not to the left and right, we want it attached to the top and bottom. And the left to right dimension is just center. So it's kind of the opposite. It puts T and B here for top and bottom and center. So now we've got left and right behavior working great. And up and down working great. Isn't that awesome? It's so cool. So let's look at another example. Now, I had a project like this, and this is where I actually learned absolute positioning for the first time, was I was wanting to build a component that sort of behaved like this, where it would have an annotation around the outside of it. And I really had no idea how to approach it until I had learned about the absolute positioning. So let's show how this is constructed. Well, here we have our frame. So this is what we're going to build it in. And let's start with this one. So I've got a frame that I'm going to just make it the right size to start. And this is actually a box with a stroke on 3 sides. That's how I built this 3-sided box. Now, how do we get this box into this frame? Well, I'm just going to drag it inside initially, and then turn on this absolute positioning switch. I then say, what is it attached to? Well, it's attached to the right side for sure, and it's attached to the top and bottom because it's going to grow as the frame grows. Now I just need to get it in the right spot. So let me just move X to about here, and Y just sort of there. You can always tinker with it later. It's part of the frame. I had to put it in the frame first and then have it positioned outside so that it knows it's part of the frame. Let's just test that first of all. Okay, looks good. And the top and bottom, it should stretch accordingly. Nice. Okay, now I've got some text that I also want sort of positioned right about here. Well, that I also have to make it part of the frame. So I just find it's easier. Just drag it in the frame, turn off auto layout. So now it's sort of floating loose. This also is going to be attached to the right side, and it's going to be attached vertically to the center in this case. And now I just need to get it in the right position. So I'm just going to put X to about there, Y to about there. And now let's try that. So as the frame moves, oh, it's awesome. Then we more or less repeat it for the other side. Drag this into the frame, turn off auto layout. Now, how's it attached? In this case, I want it attached to the left and right, and it's attached to the top of the frame. It's going to follow wherever the top of the frame goes. Let's get the width of this correct as well. something like that. Now let's get it in position. X is actually fine. Y just needs to be up here a bit. I've got left and right, yeah, and I've got top. That looks good. Let's try it. Yeah, nice. Very nice. Now I just need a copy of this number. It's already absolute position, so I don't need to put it in the frame and do that trick. It's already loose. I just need to attach it to some part of the frame. So what will that be? Okay, it's attached horizontally to the middle. So that's horizontal center. And then vertically, it's going to move with the top of the frame. So that's this part would be top. Vertical top, horizontal center. Let's try that. Oh, yes. Isn't that awesome? Anyway, really powerful stuff. Now, what if instead of a number here, you wanted to get really fancy and put another auto layout frame here? Like maybe you had a list of employees or something that you wanted to show here. Well, let's try something like that. Now, this is an interesting challenge, but when you have a frame like this and you don't know how many rows are going to be in it, when you add more content, it grows down. And if you were to increase the size of some of the content, it grows to the right. That's very normal behavior, but in this case, I don't want that. I want it to grow vertically in both directions, sort of centered around its midpoint. So it turns out you can just click on your frame, and these settings actually control how the frame grows as it gets bigger. So I don't want it left top. I can just change it to left center. So now watch what happens. If I add more content in here by duplicating this row, say, it's now growing both directions. That's exactly what I want. And if one of the bars inside grows, it grows to the right, which again is what I want. So can we attach this like this? Let's try it. Okay, so I'm going to take this frame, I'm going to drag it inside this frame, but I'm going to turn on absolute positioning, and I want this entire frame to be attached to the right side of the frame and vertically centered. Now I just need to XY it into position. That's actually pretty good right there. Let's watch what happens as I move the frame. Oh, that's so cool. And then as this grows, it's doing exactly what I want. Oh, I love it. How cool is that? All right. This should be enough to give you a really good taste of what absolute positioning is all about, how it's used, and give you some ideas on how to approach these types of layout behaviors. So thanks very much, and I'll see you again soon.